Hey guys, welcome to this episode. We've got Matt Saunders with Simple Real Estate Solutions, and he is amazing. He has over 57 rental properties that are all paid off. He's bringing in over $50,000 in monetary money every single month. And so we are going to talk about how to grow and scale your business through rental properties. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Chantel. Thank you.
So I want you to talk about, I know before we started recording, we were talking about the BRRRR method, B.R.R.R.R strategy, which is called to buy, to rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. And so for people who've never heard of the BRRRR strategy, what is it and how do you do it?
Okay, well, go back. I'll start with why, okay? Depending on where you are in your personal income, which is a whole segment I could go on about improving your skills so you can earn more without increasing your lifestyle where you end up spending more. But let's just put that off to the side and let's pretend you've accumulated $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 from savings, okay? And then you've either hooked up with an agent or you've bought some books and figured out how to buy buy real estate inexpensively. And generally that real estate is going to be in lousy condition, okay? But you also need a motivated seller. That's a topic on how to buy is, we could talk an hour on that, but you have to know how to buy. One of the things that was told to me when I first started buying rental property was that you make your money when you buy it. And I never understood that until I started buying it. And then the light went off. Mm-hmm. So go back to the BRRRR method, buy, renovate.
Yeah, so you're right. Let's break it down each one and we'll talk about each one for a second. So now let's just talk about buying. What is your formula to buy the property? And I love that. You make your money when you buy the property. Everyone needs to hear that again.
All right. So like, here's the thing. It's going to take a lot of work to buy a property that is undervalued. Okay. A lot of work. If you're working with an agent, you're going to need to work with an agent that's really used to doing what's required to get a property under value. That may be putting in 100 offers on property that you haven't even seen that meet certain criteria, like it's been on the market more than 6 months. There's a lot of work. And that's why I said it's a whole segment by itself. I mean, we're at the point where we do a tremendous amount of monthly marketing, like $15,000 a month to find our properties, but that's not realistic for somebody who's trying to start off. But there's a million books you can buy. At the end of the day, whether it's door knocking, whether it's working through agents, whether it's some direct marketing, whatever it is, there's a lot of books and courses out there. I wouldn't spend a lot on it because if you bought $100 of books, 90% of anything you could learn is right in there, no matter how much you spend with someone else's course. So anyhow, you have to learn how to buy correctly. Okay. In order to buy correctly, you have to understand real estate values too.
Yeah, so a lot of flippers use the formula. They say the after repair value times 0.7 or times 70% minus repairs equals the maximum purchase price. So for example, if you thought after you fixed the house, it was going to be $100,000, you multiply that by 70%, that gives you $70,000. If you think that there's going to be $20,000 in repairs, then the maximum you should spend on flipping the property is $50,000. Is that
Correct.
The formula you use, or is there another formula that you use?
Okay, so that's a good formula. Okay, when it comes to rental property in this area, okay, that formula is fantastic, especially when you're talking about an after renovation value of $100,000 or $80,000 or $120,000, but in the lower section. Okay. And the reason for that is that $100,000 house here, you can get 100, 1,100, 1,150, 950. There's some variances, but let's say $1,000 solid per month in rent. Okay. A $200,000 property, you can get $1,400 a month for. You might get $1,450. A $300,000 property, you might get $1,700. It starts, you get less per month in rent as the value's higher. So come circle around back to what you're saying. Let's pretend the people listening have a market that's similar to this area, in that it really doesn't make sense once you start getting past 100, 120 in value as a rental property. Then circle back, and yes, that formula is perfect, because the whole BRRRR formula is reliant on you buying a house. In this case, in this example, it was $50,000. You're rehabbing it. In the case we just said, $20,000. Okay. You're then renting it and then refinancing it. And refinances are based on, generally speaking, 70 or 80% they're going to give you of the value. So if this house was worth $100,000 and they give you 75% of the value, you get $25,000 back. So you bought it for 50, probably with some loan. You put 20 or 25 in with your own money. Now you refinanced it for 75 because it appraised at 100. You've got your 25 back. Now you can go and repeat that again. Buy another $50,000 property with a loan, spend your 25 renovating it, rent it out, refinance it, get your 25 back, and you're repeating this. So with your working capital, you're able to just each year get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties, depending on how fast you can find the deals in your working capital. Probably depending on your life situation, it wouldn't be but a few a year. But so what? If you can do a few a year, 10 years from now, that's 30 houses.
Yeah.
So to be exact with the formulas, yes, if you're in $100,000 market, that's perfect, because buy, renovate, rent, rehab, or refinance and repeat will not work if you're not buying it at the formula you just mentioned. Because let's pretend instead of 50,000, you bought it at 75. It's still worth only 100 after you renovate it. So then you put your 25 in it. Now it's worth 100, and you put 100 in. You go to refinance, and they're going to give you 75% of the value, which is 75,000. You didn't get your working capital out. You see what I mean? So yeah. Your formula for that $100,000 house, as we just covered it, is spot on.
So what would you say to someone where you say, like, because honestly, these kind of deals, like you said, you're spending $15,000 a month on trying to get those deals. Yeah. And those deals just don't come across all the time. So it's very difficult to get those deals.
Yes.
What if someone says, okay, look, with that formula on the buy side, let's say they said, okay, it's $100,000 house. You're telling me to buy it at 50. You think after repaired value is $100,000. And so you're saying, okay, if we do the math, it needs $20,000 worth of work. We need to buy it at $50,000. Let's say that same house, they say, we can buy it at $70,000. That's the best price we can get. For someone who's just getting started, would you tell them, like, they just want to get their feet wet? They're like, look, I want to build up my rental portfolio. I'm never going to flip it. I'm just going to keep it and rent it. Would you tell them to just walk away and just wait? Or would you tell them, okay, your margins might be a little bit skinnier. Would you say someone who's just getting their feet wet, their margins could be a little bit smaller than yours?
So here's a super, it's a great question. Okay. And here's my experience, and here's my best advice I can give. Don't start with a rental property. Start with something in a vision that 5 years or 10 years from now with rental property, you can commit to because the payoff is good enough in your mind. So for me, and I'm going to circle around why I'm telling you this. It started with this one question, and the answer is it depends what your 5, 10, or 15-year vision is. Okay. For me, it was really simple. I was like, man, if I could have 10 paid off rental properties 15 years from now, and this was back in 2001 or 2, oh my God, it would be so great. I mean, just to know I have 10,000 a month coming in and I'm not having to work so hard and be stressed week to week and month to month. Are sales good? Are they bad? Just, oh my God, that was worth whatever I had to do to get there. Okay. But if I had just been like, oh yeah, I hear rental property is a good idea, and I buy a rental property, once that rental property started to create headaches and problems, I would only be seeing, hey, I'm making $400 a month off this property, but this tenant just trashed it. I'm spending $3,000. Well, there goes like almost 9 months of quote cash flow, and I'm having to make a mortgage payment. Oh God, now there's, $1,100 going. Like, you wouldn't have perspective. You would just have pain. Okay. But if you had a vision that's like, man, if I can just get this many and I can pay them off in this fashion over time and I can put away this money, now the pain's worth it. Okay.
I like that because that is true. And that's actually what I gave my mom. I feel like I gave my mom some bad advice a couple of years ago because she had a great duplex down at the oceanfront, and she ended up selling it because at that time my dad had passed away and it was like needing so much work. You know how a property gets to the point where like you don't do anything for a while, and every month she was just so stressed.
Yes.
And so she was like, okay, I've got to sell this thing because she was, it was, do you have paint? She had to paint. And then she had vacancy for a couple months. And then she had the HVAC went out and she was just pouring out money.
And then on top of it, think about it. She's also, you said your dad had passed away, right?
Yeah.
That's stressful to begin with.
Yeah. So I had just told her, I said, why don't you just sell it and you can get something later on down the road? But I still don't think it was great advice to her at the time because it probably was still good advice for her because
she was too much for her to handle.
It was just too much for her to do.
Yes.
But honestly, I should have probably just bought it from her and said, let me buy it from you so you don't have that stress and I'll sell it back to you like at a later time or something like that.
Sure.
So let's talk about rehab for a second, because that's the second R. And so there's 2 key questions that people want to ask and keep in mind when they're rehabbing a rental. Number 1, what do I need to do to make this house livable and functional? And number 2, which rehab decisions can I make that will add more value than their cost? Okay. So I want you to talk about and get right down to the nitty gritty.
I'm going to get down to the nitty gritty. Okay. Because this is like so important. Okay. And I'm going to love saying this, even though it's inflammatory. What you think doesn't matter. If you're not the customer in that market price you're pricing, you see this all the time. Even my own brother-in-law did it. He over-renovated his rentals because he's like, I want to make it really nice. So where he could have spent $15,000 and literally got the same amount of rent, he spent like $30,000. I want to put granite countertops on because that's how it would be if I had a rental, I'd like it. That's not thinking, going back to the goal. Okay, what are you really trying to do here? If you're just trying to make really nice rental property because you just like babysitting people, then great, make it and make no money. But you want to figure out when it comes to a rehab what you need to do. And the easiest way to do that is get online and look at the houses that are renting that in your price point near your house, and don't over renovate it. So that's the number 1 thing, is don't over renovate it for a rental property. That's like asterisk. Do not over renovate.
Okay, so let's get specific there. So like, for example, are you ever putting granite countertops or Brazilian hardwood floors or high-end stainless steel appliances in your properties?
Absolutely never. Now, that's the price point I'm in. If I was in a vacation town where I'm trying to get a certain amount, it could be different. But generally, vacation homes make no money. They're an emotional sell, and they offset the cost of having it. Generally, I'm not saying it can't be different, but yeah, in the regular rental market where people live around here, I've identified that $1,000 minimum monthly rent is the least I want to deal with, and that for that, a house under $100,000 in value works, and I can pick those up at 50. So I'm 50,000 all in, renting at $1,000 a month. I think I've gotten off topic. Let me go back to we were talking about the renovation. So for those renovations, the key is functionality and appearance. When you look at appearance, if you take the flooring and the walls, the paint and flooring is 90% of everything your eye can see. So those are your basics for making it look nice, paint and flooring.
Well, let's break it down even more. So like for you, obviously you've got contractors that you're getting for a better price. This is going to be hard for people to match, but at least they could get somewhere near that. Yes. So for painting, what are you paying to paint the properties?
All right. So this is really important too. When you're doing this, let's call it BRRRR. Okay. The people you need to be hiring are people that have no office, work from their house. They might have a side helper, maybe two at most, and that's it. And the reason for that is their overhead's very low. So when they're making, let's just say what I pay for paint, generally labor, and you always break out, you want all your estimates broken out, labor and materials. You never want it combined, ever, ever, ever. Okay. I'm paying $1 a square foot for labor on painting. Now, let me tell you what that means, because it's very easy to confuse that. If it's 1,000 square foot house, I am paying $1,000 for labor. That is walls, trim, and ceiling. So the amount of square footage being painted is 4 or 5 times that. Because if this room right here, pretend it was 100 square feet, well, each wall is also 100 square feet almost, as well as the ceiling. Well, the walls aren't quite, but the ceiling is. So you do it by the square footage of the house, not the square footage of what's being painted. And $1 a square foot for a guy who's used to painting, it's far more than he or she earns working for somebody. Okay. So you're really looking for that self-employed person. And they're going to spray the house and then trim it and paint it. And then you buy material.
And then what about the cost of the paint?
I think I just kind of guesstimated that at if you have a 1,500 square, well, I gave you 25 cents as a shooting point, but a 1,500 square foot house is going to cost about $300 in paint materials, maybe $400. You might be able to get it for $200, but somewhere in there, you get the cheaper paints and it takes more labor. But if you figured $1, 25 cents for materials, $1 for labor, you'd be fine. And then really the key with hiring that labor is you never pay in advance, because remember, you're going to buy the materials. They're not out of pocket for materials. Okay. And you pay as a job is completed, not in advance. And you don't even pay halfway through. If they're halfway done with a job and you give them half, they will leave if they have a better job, literally, because they've done half the work. They got half the money. Now they have a job they like better. They're just going to leave.
Wow.
So anyhow, you pay.
But what if they say to you, look, I don't have the money for materials. You have to at least pay for materials.
That's what I'm saying. You pay for materials.
You pay for the materials, but you don't pay for
Home Depot, and literally the Home Depot will call you at the contractor desk and you pay over the phone with your credit card.
Okay.
Boom. You don't have to go with them, or you can go with them depending on how much you want to control that. Yeah. So
Okay, so you'll pay for all the materials up front, but you just won't pay them even for half the job until the whole job is completely done.
If they're 90% done with the job and they want half the money, fine. Because if they walk, I'll get someone else to finish it because it's 90% done. But you want to be like, well, if they're halfway done and they need a draw, don't give them more than 20% of the work they've done. Because if they walk, you don't want to be at a deficit. Finish the job. And once you get a good contractor, you'll trust them. But in the beginning, trust nothing. If they don't start off well, like, if they're like, hey, I'll be there Monday, and you stop by Tuesday and they haven't done anything, just cut the ties. I mean, if it does not start well, it never ends well.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be like clear. And you're like, oh my God, it's so much pain finding someone else. I'm just going to live with this devil. It's never good. It's just only gets worse from there.
All right, let's talk about flooring then. What are you paying? Let's separate it out. What are you paying for labor and what are you paying for materials?
Okay. Currently, I switched our flooring, and that will continue to switch because this is a moving target because you've got that luxury vinyl plank stuff, or they call it luxury, but it's the laminate that we used to buy, or you still get. That laminate, the problem with that is if it gets wet, it swells. And so it's a terrible choice for a rental property. I mean, like rotten. But the new stuff is vinyl. So meaning it's rubber instead of that press board underneath the veneer surface that makes it look like wood. So we've switched to that. We used to pay under $1 a square foot for like typical laminate with press board, but we did that in our rehabs, not our rentals. In the actual rentals, we're paying $1.68 right now, and I bet that'll be $1 in a year because those vinyl products are coming down with the popularity. So it looks like wood flooring, it looks like laminate, but it's vinyl. The great thing about that is you can put it everywhere, meaning the bedrooms, the bathroom, the kitchen. And the nice thing about it is if you stick with one and maybe even save some, like put it in a garage or something, you can, if they tear some of the tile moving the fridge, or not tile, flooring, you can pop up the pieces and put down the necessary pieces. You don't have to replace the whole floor like you used to when it was vinyl. Like when it was in rolls of linoleum.
Yeah.
Get a tear and then it's.
Because now they're like vinyl planks. So you can just pick up that one plank and then move to the next. So, okay. So how much was that per square foot and how much is it?
$1.68 right now is what we're paying for the one we use, but there's plenty of opportunity, and we pay $1 a square foot labor on the install.
So $1.68 for the actual material and another $1
for the install.
For the install.
So 1,000 square foot house would be $1,000 labor and $11.68 in materials plus taxes.
Okay.
So
all right. Now, what about the kitchen? What are you looking at to replace that kitchen?
Okay. Well, I just use appliances for a rental property are going to be about $1,500. That's fridge, microwave, dishwasher.
And are you getting white, black, stainless?
Never stainless. I like black because it's easy to cover. If it's all dirty and scratched up, it's not the same as a white one that gets dirty and scratched up. So I like black.
Now, why don't you ever get stainless? Because now, even the stainless lookalikes, they've kind of made it where they're not that much more for like the stainless lookalikes.
It's not a bad idea. I just end up going because my rental market is a certain type of house and a certain price point. I just save money where we can save money on it. And if we found we weren't saving any money, we might do it. But again, stainless can get ugly where black is black. It's even easy to cover up if it gets ugly.
Gotcha.
And now a word from our sponsor, Canzel Realty. Run your business your way, only at Canzel Realty. You can have all the freedom with none of the standard real estate red tape. If you're an agent, you get to run the show however you want and be your own boss. If you want to launch a team, you don't have to jump through all the hurdles and holdups. From day one, you'll have tons of tools and perks to offer your team. Powerful real estate tech like KV Core, Brokerman, and Skyslope. If you want to be your own brokerage or already have your own brokerage, that's not a problem either. You'll still get to run it however you want. All Canzel requires is a small Powered by Canzel logo next to yours. You can be the broker, you can be the manager, and you get to determine splits. You get all the tech, admin support, ownership stock, and revenue share, but most importantly, all the freedom, all the time, only at Canzel Realty.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about that. So total in the kitchen, how much are you spending?
Okay, so let's say appliances, $1,500 to $1,700. Okay, now kitchen size is a big deal. Okay, and that's, again, it gets back to that price point, the size we're looking for. But I'm going to generally say, hey, it's $2,500 for countertop, cabinets, and install on a small kitchen. And I don't have that broken down beyond that because I just kind of look at it a little more macro because we've done a lot of them and kind of have a moving machine. So I can't really break down the cabinets per, but you could just go to Home Depot or Lowe's to get a basic breakdown of that. And the countertops, that's what we're using, Home Depot or Lowe's countertops. The labor's the big deal. Is I know I used to say 25 a cabinet for labor, but we're probably more like 35 now. You know, I mean, it's been a long time. So if you right behind your head right now, you've got basically 2 cabinets plus a middle cabinet. So that would be 35, and the middle would be less than 35. And underneath you, if there's cabinets, you can count the cabinets because they're relatively easy to install as long as the carpenter has got knowledge.
I know what I was going to ask you about the flooring real quick is that I've heard a lot of people say, it's not as cozy to have the wood vinyl in the bedrooms. Like they'll put vinyl everywhere, but in the bedrooms, they'll put the carpet because they feel like it's more cozy. What is your philosophy? Are you like, look, I don't care if it's cozy or not, I don't want to be steam cleaning these carpets and so forth.
Right. Well, so you just nailed it. I mean, we want something that can last a decade if possible, where carpet is a 1 to 5 year lifespan. So let's pretend we were having trouble renting a place, and let's pretend the feedback was, hey, we want a warmer feeling bedroom, these floors. We might simply say, well, then listen, and this is assuming they're a good tenant, which, by the way, is a whole nother thing we need to talk about. So let's circle back on that.
Okay, I'll ask you that from now on.
That will make your rental experience miserable.
Yes.
Or good. Okay, so that's huge.
That's next.
Not miss that. Okay, so let's just pretend we're like, yeah, we really want these people. We've done the work of the right people. Well, great. We'll say, hey, look, we have an allowance of $200 a room. Let's go to Home Depot or Lowe's, pick out the throw rug for each room. Okay, you've got 3 bedrooms, 3 throw rugs, $600. Assuming again they're your dream tenant you want. Okay. So what? Now you spent money instead of having the house go another month unrented. That's okay. But I've never had that. That's why I said, let's pretend. Generally, it looks pretty nice because all the floors are the same. And if they want something, you can always say, oh, you can go buy an inexpensive throw rug. It'll keep it nice, cozy, or anything you like.
So let's talk about the last 3 items, bathrooms, HVAC, and roof. What are you spending on bathrooms, HVAC, and roof?
Okay, so bathrooms, let's just go through that in kind of a piece by piece. Walk into Home Depot or Lowe's and look at what you can get: the vanity, the top, the faucet, and the mirror or cabinet for, because they're always having these packages. I mean, like always. And they're incredible buys, typically speaking. Your size may be awkward and not fit what they have. So then you're going to kind of need to figure out what to do there. But so you've got your cabinetry. Let's just call that, you get a good deal at Home Depot or Lowe's, and it's $300 all in. The faucet, the top, the cabinet, just materials. Toilet's usually $100, so you're at $400. Okay. installing them, let's just pretend it was 100 each, 600. Every bathroom is different because it depends. Like, are you going to put in new lighting? Are you going to have to, when I say glaze, there's these kits at Home Depot and Lowe's where if they're done properly, because part of the process is kind of stripping the showers, you can then paint tile or you can paint the fiberglass surround and it'll last a long time and look brand new. So I generally will just go in a bathroom and if it looks trash, say, hey, that's $2,000. But we're not going to put in a new bathtub. We're going to make the existing watertight and pretty. And if you're going to replace it, labor's the big deal there, plumbing and labor. The bathtub itself isn't. It's up $100 or 150 or 200. Okay. It's not much. Yeah.
And then what about with the roof and the HVAC? What are you planning?
Okay. HVAC, I'm paying $4,000 for a standard total replacement and up to $5,000 if we're going to have to rerun all the ductwork. It's a little bit less or a little bit more depending on the situations. But for a rental property, what I love, especially if you're getting it, like say if you got a little duplex in like Norfolk, okay? And I have this situation. I bought 2 duplexes side by side. They currently have central air conditioning and heating, okay? When one of those units goes out and it has to be replaced, we're going to rip it out. We're going to cut an actual wall square and have an air conditioning system that goes in that square in the wall rectangle with what's called a sleeve on the outside, because that's like $600 and will perfectly cool a 750 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And there's no HVAC costs. Then you just put the heating strips at the baseboards in each room with a dial. And now your HVAC is inexpensive. So I'm not sure that's a particular market, by the way. As your rents get more expensive, you can't do that. But in these duplexes in Norfolk, you can do that. And instead of having $4,000 replacements, once that's been done, it's inexpensive forever for HVAC, which is a huge landlord savings. And if you're renting at $750 a month and a duplex on each side, having a $4,000 expenditure every 10 years is very real. And tenants will not change the filters. Okay. Just right. Forget it. And just, unless you're going to hire someone to go do that. And then you start weighing out the pros and cons of, hey, I'm spending all this money to keep them up versus spending none and replace them every 10 years. you got to weigh out.
And then what about the roof?
Okay. I don't have good pricing on roofs because I haven't looked at it lately. I've got really good roof pricing, but I don't have it off the top of my head a square. I want to say we were around 110 or 15 a square materials, but that's easy to verify at Home Depot or Lowe's. Yeah. And I know our labor was not more than our materials. Awesome. So and a square is 10 by 10, by the way. And okay. That's how siding and roofing is done. That's how it's priced. So if you're going to talk to a guy doing siding and you're going to ask him, what are you charging per square labor? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you that. Well, you already know he's trying to quote high. Because he wants to throw it in one price so you don't know what you're paying.
That's funny. All right. So let's move on to the next R, which is rent. And it is absolutely critical, like you said, to screen diligently so you get tenants that are actually going to pay each month. So I want you to give some tips that really kind of give them practical ways that you go, these are some of the things we do when we decide whether we're going to rent to someone. And obviously, step number 1, you're going to follow all the laws. But after that, what's next?
Okay. So, if I was in Oakland, California, so if you're in Oakland listening to this, don't even bother doing the rental business in Oakland. Oakland now has just passed a law. The left coast, the commie coast, is now passed a law. Well, in Oakland, just to give you an example, where you cannot run criminal background checks.
Wow.
Yeah, as a landlord. So you can have a apartment building and you can't, you can put a violent murderer right next to a mother with 3 young children. Violent rapist murderer, you're not allowed to look at his criminal history, ask about it, or run it.
Wow. What about the credit? Can you still check their credit?
I don't have the ins and outs of the left coast and how it's just imploding in socialism, but it is literally, if we do not change that, it is just going to be like San Francisco, just a crater of just human failure. But I'm sorry, I'm going off on a different tangent. Focus. Okay.
So
what are
the steps if we were not in California, regular steps?
Yeah. Your key is so simple. As a landlord, what do you care about? That they're going to pay and that they're going to keep the place nice. That's all you care about. I mean, that's it. So the question really becomes, how can you determine if they're going to pay and if they're going to keep the house nice? And I guess since we talked about the criminal thing, that they're not going to kill you or neighbors or anyone in the house or cause other criminal events. But the two are really easy to do. Katie in my office handles all that now, and I'm so far removed from it that the actual tactical implementation, like what service we use, I don't remember, but the process is really easy. There's a host of online services that you can check and find which ones do good background checks. Okay. But what you're really looking for is you want to verify their income, how much they make, and then you want to verify their monthly minimum payments through whatever these online services pull to verify. So if you're renting to a tenant that looks like they make $4,000 a month, but their minimum payments after their car and all this other stuff eats up $3,500, you're talking to a tenant that's going to not be able to pay the rent. You know, they're going to have a lot of life circumstances. The car breaks. What do? Get the car fixed or pay the rent? You know, yeah. So your typical background checking to make sure that they have the income and that their obligations don't exceed their income is key. I think the general rule is like 3 times rent. Their income should be in a gross span or a minimum of 3 times rent. So if you're renting $1,000 place, their gross income needs to be $3,000 a month. But that's just a minimum type of criteria. You really need those reports to kind of see, are they going to be able to pay? And they're pretty good reports. They go back to eviction histories and things like this.
And where are you advertising to get these people? Are you going to apartments.com, rentals.com, Craigslist? Are you just putting a sign in the yard? Is it, getting referrals from family and friends? You could even put flyers in your grocery store if you wanted to, but what's kind of your go-to? Like, you've got a property, it's time to rent it. Where are you advertising at?
That is such a good question. And Katie in my office is my property manager and my transactional manager for all of our flips. And I'm far enough removed because I've been doing this a long time. I'm not exactly sure where she is advertising. I can tell you some of the things we've done that I remember.
Okay.
One of the things we like doing is, because my wife has her license, is just throwing it on MLS, because the moment you put it on MLS, it populates within a day to Trulia and like all the other sites. You know what I mean? It auto populates all those sites. So if you put it for rent in MLS, it goes to everywhere else. And so, I mean, nowadays online is key. Everyone looks online.
Okay.
I know we use a site called Go Section 8 when we want to rent on Section 8. Section 8 is a pretty easy scenario because the money, you can understand the money side of it and how you're going to get paid, because go back to, step number 1. Am I going to get the rent? Step number 2, are they going to keep the place nicely? One of the things I like to do with Section 8 is simply mail them the app, but then literally go to their house directly where they're currently renting from and just say, hey, I'm on the way to check another property. Here's the application. Do you mind if I use the restroom while I'm here? Because I just, whatever. And if you can get from their front door through their house to their restroom and back out, you now know how they live, which is key. I mean, you want to know, are they trashing the place or keeping the place? That's all. Do they have 75 people in there? That's another thing on Section 8 you have to be careful about is them sub-renting. And if you have too many people in the house, your wear and tear is going to go through the roof. But I do like Section 8. I'll tell you that right now.
Out of you've got 57 properties. What percentage of those properties are Section 8 that you have?
Not a lot. We'll probably have 7 or 8.
7 or 8?
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing you said to me, I remember you told me about a property and you're like, Chantel, I think you said like, hey, I'm not going to take this property. I've got too many in the pipeline right now. Do you want it? And I think my response to you was something like, I don't really love that area. I feel like it's a really high crime rate. And you said something to me along the lines of, Chantel, you don't have to live there. Like, you just have to rent it out. And something like, if the numbers work, look at the numbers. Like, it doesn't matter. Do the numbers work? Do you remember me having that conversation with you?
I remember probably more than one like that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's the same thing I did when I first started buying rental property, is I looked at it and I'm like, well, okay, I understand you can't make money renting a $400,000 house, at least here. Okay. There are ways to do that, but let's keep it in the normal rental perspective. So I rented these houses that I could see, okay, it's okay if I live there, and they were expensive for what I got in rent. So circling back around, yes, I look at the rental property strictly from the numbers. One of the things that's important to remember is that neighborhood is a good neighborhood for somebody coming from another neighborhood. That's all I mean. Like, I remember Lake Edward when I first started flipping houses. I had never really been exposed to a neighborhood like that. And I was like kind of scared to be there. Now I'm like, Lake Edward, that's a good neighborhood because I've been to so many neighborhoods and I've seen the spectrum of what you call, rough neighborhoods, board ups. So like a neighborhood where half the houses are boarded up, I'm not even going to buy in at all. That's a rough neighborhood. People coming from there, going to live in a neighborhood that you're like, this is rough, I don't like it. They're like, this is a great neighborhood. So every neighborhood is going to have people that are like, this is a good neighborhood. I like it. Depends on where they're coming from. I answered that kind of long, but yeah, I'm all about the numbers. It goes back to $50,000 all in, $1,000 a month rent. That's what I'm shooting for.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because one of the things that I teach people is the 1% rule. Yeah. And, I think the 1% rule personally is great for just the average person. Like, I know you kind of follow the 2% rule because you're just a beast. Yeah, you're a beast and you can. But I personally think, like even for me, I follow the 1% rule, which means that if I'm going to buy a house for $100,000, I want to get $1,000 a month for it. $200,000 property, I want to get $2,000 a month in rent.
Yes.
So explain the 2% rule a little bit more in detail of how you do it. What your goal is.
All right, let me go back to, this will explain it anyhow. When you buy an investment, okay, and I'm talking generic, like if you read a lot of books on investing and money and finance and getting wealthy over time, which I read so many when I was young because I wanted to be wealthy and financially independent, all that stuff, which I can't underscore the value of just learning. If you want to become financially independent, learn, even if it's just an hour a day or a half hour a day, but you do that every day. 2 years later, golly, it's amazing. But go back to your question. 2 ways to look at an investment: cash flow, meaning, cash flow is such an overused word. How much money you're getting after all expenses per year. And then the other way is growth. So like in the stock market, cash flow would be called a dividend. You're buying, like if you buy a utility company like the electric company that provides electricity, and the stock's $100 and gives you 4% dividend a year, that meant if you had 100,000 in there, you would get $4,000 a year in dividends. It's not going to grow much. It might grow from 100 to 105, but it's a static type of environment. It's not like the electric company is going to do some new invention and now 10 times the houses have electricity. It's just very stable, and it's a dividend. When you buy my $50,000 house, it's very stable. It's not going to go up in value a lot. So it's got very little growth potential, in my opinion. Okay. There are some exceptions to that, but I'm not going to complicate it explaining irrational lending and the booms that happen due to it. But I buy for cash flow, meaning I put $50,000 in, I'm getting $1,000 a month out. Whether I have a note on that, meaning I financed it, or I don't, I'm making money on an annual basis, period. Over on your point, the 1%, like those first houses I bought when I first got started, they were even a little bit less than 1%, meaning like I bought a $135,000 house to begin with, and I put 20% down. And I think I got $1,165 a month in rent. And that was very much the first 4 or 5 houses I bought, $125,000 houses. And this is in the beginning of 2000. Today they're worth $250,000. So they've grown in growth. They've growth. That's what I mean by growth. Their value.
Well, I want to say something real quick, because I think the one thing that people forget that I've seen, that people they remember the 1% rule. They're like $100,000 times 1%. That means if I buy it for $100,000, I need to rent it for $1,000. The piece they forget is that the calculation multiplies the purchase price of the property plus any necessary repairs by 1%. So that means if you're paying $100,000 and you put $25,000 in repairs, now you need to be able to get $1,250. And that's the piece I see people missing as well, because they'll just be like, okay, yeah, I've got a good deal, but they forget to add the repairs.
Yes. And so if you buy at that number you're saying at, you just want to be buying with the idea that appreciation is really going to be your payoff. Because I think we were just covering, you're like, hey, I bought this house. It doesn't need much. and you did get a really awesome buy on it. Here's what I want to say. Add about $300 a month for repairs on a single family detached house. Say it's 1,500 square feet or smaller. Add 150 to 200 if you have a townhouse. Okay. Just factor that in, knowing per month, hey, my mortgage payment is $800. My rent's $1,100. I'm not really making $300. It looks like I'm making $300, but I need to bank that, because when this tenant moves out, it could be 2 years from now. Maybe they trash the carpet. Great, I get their security deposit at $1,200. And I got to paint the place, and the HVAC broke, and all of a sudden you're putting out $4,000 to get the place rent ready again, and missing a month or 2 months of payments. I mean, you have to make the mortgage payment. So single family houses, if you're not accounting for that reality that they're going to pop up every once in a while and have $4,000, hey, I need it, you're going to end up in some financial pain, and eventually become a customer of a house buying company that sells, takes away the pain.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, to buy a house inexpensively, there has to be pain. There has to be motivation. And that motivation could just be, the person could be very wealthy and look at the house and go, I don't want to mess with it. I mean, right. I don't want to mess with that. That is such a mess. I don't need to, I don't want to. Or it could be the opposite. They're financially stressed because they can't make both payments. And that.
All right. So let's go to the final. We have buy, rehab, rent, Now we're at refinance. So not too long ago, it was actually kind of hard to find a bank that was willing to refinance a single family rental property, but now it's gotten a lot easier. So any tips on the refinancing when you're talking about a rental property, and any tips for people on that?
Okay. So directly, I don't have those tips because the route I did is such a different type of route. But
you're like, because I pay everything off in cash. So, I don't really need to do the refinance step.
Well, I mean, you're looking at 20. I started investing a third of what I earned in 1992.
I love that. See, that's the kind of nugget. That's such a good nugget, because that's like where you say, okay, I've got this much money coming in. And my advice obviously would be take that first 10%, give that back to the Lord, and then take the rest of it. But I love that. Just that's a system that people could put in place and literally say, okay, I'm going to take that third and put it over here, and I'm going to try to reinvest it.
And the easiest way to start on a plan like that is when you're re-engaging in your career and your skill set so that you could earn more. Because when you earn more, taking income, see, it's hard. Let's just pretend you make $50,000 a year and you've been spending, like the average American, $51,000. You're actually spending more than the average, you know what I mean? Quite literally. Then the idea of like even taking 10%, you're like, what? But now you're like, hey, I'm doing these things. I'm optimistic that I'm improving my skill sets. I'm improving myself. I'm improving my character, my work ethic. I'm going to get a promotion and make $70,000. Now it's very easy to say, of that 70, I'm going to take half of the increase and enjoy it. But the other half I'm going to invest. And then when you go to 90, do the same thing. Take a percentage to, quote, enjoy the growth, but take a bigger percentage to invest for your future. That's the key. I mean, people just want to think one day they're going to boom. But in fact, for our staff meeting, I like doing quotes, and I have a couple quotes to that I just texted myself. Here, you'll like this. This one's a little negative, but nobody ever wrote down a plan to be broke, fat, lazy, or stupid. These things happen, or what happen when you don't have a plan. So anyhow, you start making a plan to increase your income. You start making a plan to when, as my income increases, this is the percentage I'm going to invest. You start making plans like that. And to this point, there's no royal road or anything. One thing at a time, all things in succession. That which grows fast withers as rapidly. That which grows slowly endures. And so like you're coming back to like, how do I make money in real estate? Dude, why are you talking to me about learning more to earn more and working on my character and all these other things? Well, because they all tie in. I mean, you're not going to get lucky and just make $1 million. And if you do, for certain, you're going to mistake your luck for skill and lose that million.
I love that. Well, the last R is repeat. And I think that's kind of, you don't really need to say a lot about that. You've clearly done the repeat 57 times. So what's your goal? Like how many more? Are you trying to shoot for 100, or what's your goal on how many properties you have?
Doing all that. Okay. So like I said, my first goal was to get 10 paid off so I could have like $10,000 a month and be like, it's okay. And then that became 20, and then that became 30, and then that became 40, and now it's 50. And now, so I realized in that process that, and here's a couple financial builders. I just philosophically identified very early on in life that there was no such thing as, I hate to say enough, but there isn't. Like financial independence to one person might mean $2,000 a month, and financial independence to another person might literally mean $1 million a month. Okay, so circling around, I I kind of identified level 1 independence, financial independence, level 2, then level 3. Level 1 is, hey, my basic stuff is covered. For me, that was $10,000 a month, meaning like my basic necessities that I call necessities are covered. Level 2 is my current lifestyle is covered, because my current lifestyle is far bigger than necessities. I won't go over all this stuff, but you get the idea. Then level 3 is just that unlimited, and there's no limit.
And
to
do
that.
you feel like you've reached that now?
Which level 2 or 3?
3.
Oh God, no. Level 3, level 3 is oh God. I mean, like if I'm like, hey, I don't mind that I'm spending $3 million a year for a private jet to sit there whenever I want it. That would be like level 3, and I don't mind.
So what's your next goal? So you've already hit the 50,000.
Well, see, here's the funny
50,000.
thing. So the short answer to that is my goal is in perpetuity to grow the rental business. Well, meaning, because I've already seen there isn't like a number that I'm like, okay, that's good. It's like, hey, I enjoy working with some of the people I work with. I enjoy if my kids later on in life want to get involved with real estate, having a portfolio where they might be able to be involved. So it's just an in perpetuity type of thing that I want to continue to grow. And then knowing that at any point, if I really, for unforeseen reasons, just say like, I'm done. Okay, I'll just be done at that point. Mm-hmm. So if we're sitting here talking 5 years from now, mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if I had $200,000 a month in rental property, and I wouldn't be surprised if I had 100, and I wouldn't even be surprised if I had 75, because I've just kind of come to a place where I'm growing that, but I'm not wrapped around it.
Got it.
And that is, by the way, the value of getting to some level of financial.
To that point, yeah. Well, you always, every time I meet with you, I'm always like, okay, I'm ready to buy another rental. Like if I have lunch with you or talk with you, I'm like, all right, where's my next rental coming from? Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Oh God, I'm not a guru, dude. I mean, I don't have any following.
What about Facebook? Where can they find you on Facebook?
Oh God.
We'll put the link below. How about that? We'll put your Facebook link.
I'm not a social media guy. You know what? I'm just not social media. I'm not a guru. I'm not selling stuff. I just was, when you asked, hey, will you come on and talk about this stuff? I'm passionate about it, especially like helping people understand, hey, they need to develop themselves. And if they do that, here's how to set the goals, and here's how to just move forward in life. And that's what it's all about, is kind of that forward progression and realization of whatever your potential is. It doesn't have to be real estate and money. And that's why I was like, yeah, sure, I'll talk about it. Maybe it'll help somebody.
You're awesome.
But yeah.
Well, you guys stay tuned. This has been amazing. Thank you again, Matt. And you guys stay tuned, because we have another episode coming up in just a few.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a rating and a review so we can get this out to more agents. And tune in next week for another power-packed episode. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Podcast.